Okay, welcome everybody to another installment of the PHYA Academy Video Newsletter. Today we are continuing our talks on heroism. Let me see if I can get the slide to work. Hey, there we go. It's only my job, it's not a big deal. So, heroism today. We've talked a little bit about the definition of heroism, and if we're trying to bring ourselves into, the modern world where we're living at right now, when we think of the word hero or what it means to be heroic, we're oftentimes talking about a person who's admired for achievements and noble qualities, or somebody who shows great courage. But that means something different in our time, right? We live in the modern age where life is, let's be honest, it's very good. Life is very comfortable. We have an immense amount of material wealth and prosperity. Technology seemingly makes the things that were difficult even more easy year after year. Time and space are being shrunk through, computers, the internet, communications technology, and all of this is very good. But one thing that it prevents us from doing is seeking out things that are uncomfortable, seeking out things that are difficult, seeking out things that are hard. And when we're not engaging in this kind of adventure or a life that is thrusting discomfort upon us, we lack the chance, we lack the potential to become courageous, to show our bravery, and to act out a heroic ideal. And there's even something else, I think, which we all understand is happening in our society. Victims are being put at the top, and anybody else is going underneath. So those who wallow in self-pity, those who are oppressed, those who are weak, they are the ones who are praised. And I think the sense that the activist is seen as like the most moral or the most, societally impactful occupation or calling, right? Everybody wants to be an activist, but they're not actually acting on anything. They're just spreading words, and oftentimes activism brings on sort of a victim mentality, right? Something's happening to me, and I must ensure that the world conforms to my situation, as opposed to me going out and changing the world or changing myself in hopes of making a better world. So how do we show courage in a society that celebrates victimization, in a sense, in a society that doesn't give us the chance? These are all very important ideas. So let's go back all the way to the ancient Greeks, as we do in these video newsletters, and talk a little bit about this notion of heroism and how ancient Greeks, the ones who gave us athletics, understood heroism, right? Now, one of the ways we can best understand heroism, right, is this notion of doing something hard and difficult and sacrificing in order, right, to bring about an outcome that's greater than yourself. And this is historically understood best through the medium of warfare. And it's no accident that the athlete in Greek history is related to the soldier, and the soldier is related to the politician, and the politician is related to the philosopher. They're all related to each other. And the athlete holds a particularly high place. But we have to know a little bit about the soldier first. So the hoplite was the soldier of classical Greece. Here you can see them in formation, known as the phalanx. And what's typical of the phalanx is the large shield, which covers half your body, but half of the body of the soldier who stands on your right. And so everybody is essentially covering themselves and somebody else, except for one individual. And that's the person, let me see if I can get my cursor here. Yes, that's this guy right here. He's at the top left. He's the only one who is exposed, right? This is the place of maximum danger, yet this is also the place of maximum honor. So the soldiers literally died in order to achieve this position. And when you were in this position, you were almost certain to die in battle because of the exposure. Now, what's cool about this formation is it both gives soldiers a chance to display individual bravery while also showing mutual responsibility to those around you. And you would think, right, that the soldiers who are literally dying in order to defend potentially their city state would be valorized, would be heroized, would be elevated to the greatest of heroic status. But that's not actually true. It was the athletes that were the true heroes of this time period in ancient Greece, even when the phalanxes and the hoplites were defeating the invading Persians, the world's largest military empire and the most sophisticated military that had been seen at that time. And these formations were able to beat them back, yet still the athletes held a more heroic role than even these soldiers. And that might seem strange to us. But sometimes the heroes are the ones who don't appear the most heroic. And that brings me to heroism in action today in the sporting world. Looking back at, well, we don't really have these guys anymore, but they were pretty big for a long time in the NHL and in hockey generally, the role of the enforcer. Now, these were the individuals who would fight in order to protect their teammates, oftentimes being pitted against the fighter of the other team. And they were kind of like the on-ice sheriffs, making sure that the star players weren't being harassed, weren't being taken in by cheap shots. Hockey is a very fast-paced, intense game, which is played in a confined space, and everybody holds a weapon. So tensions boil up. Anger is a part of the game. Emotion is part of the game. And without this safety valve of fighting, things can get actually much more dangerous. And so the enforcer's role was to put everybody else on notice that if you want to try a cheap shot, if you want to go after a certain player, you will face consequences. Now, they aren't part of the game anymore for a bunch of reasons, but they can definitely teach us about honor and respect. One of the things that's so strange about the enforcers is they were usually the nicest and kindest players. They oftentimes were the most educated. A lot of the enforcers who prowled the ice in the NHL, sort of in the late 2000s and the early 2010s. A lot of them had Ivy League education. So these are not dumb jocks who just go around punching people for kicks. They knew their role. They understood exactly what they were there to do. They took their sacrifice on with pride, and they were the ultimate glue guys. They were the ones who kept the room, kept the team together. And if you ask NHL players today, right, do they want fighting taken out of the game? They do not want fighting taken out. And they all appreciated and they all respected the role of the enforcer. Now, unfortunately, due to entertainment, fighting is a pretty entertaining part of hockey. And so a lot of times these enforcers were turned into kind of like a sideshow or a spectacle. And this is actually quite another important lesson for us, because when somebody is making an honest sacrifice, right, and they're putting themselves in a position of maximum danger, we have to respect them, just as that position in the hoplite phalanx was the most respected because they took on the dangerous position. Well, what did we do to the enforcers? We turned them into a spectacle. We paraded them around as these like almost freaks that existed as a part of a hockey team, right? It got so bad that some of the enforcers would only play like 2, 3, 4 minutes a game. And the only time they were ever sent out was to physically intimidate somebody or to punch somebody else in the face. And that doesn't take into account the honor of what they are attempting to do or why they maybe signed up for the role in the first place. And it's a very demanding role, both in terms of the body, but also in terms of the mental stress and the preparation that's needed, right? To know that every time you step on the ice, you may be engaged in a fight which has dire consequences. A lot of enforcers, and especially the ones who existed in the sideshow era, battled drug abuse, mental health issues, and there was this one period where 3 former enforcers all committed suicide or overdosed within a few months of each other. And this is terrible. But is it because of the fact that they had to face violence? Or was it the fact that they were taking on this very serious and important role? People didn't respect them for it, didn't understand the danger, didn't understand the courage, and didn't give them the adequate support that they needed. The one nice thing about that hoplite phalanx, right? Everybody's in it together. Everybody knows the struggle. Everybody knows the sacrifice. When it came to these enforcers, they were willing to put themselves on the line. But the people who gained, especially like the fans and maybe the coaches, they left them out to dry. And that's a part of the dishonor that we see in our culture. We don't understand a hero when we see them. We'd much rather look at the victims, say the violence or the, if somebody gets concussed on the ice in a fight, we say, oh, this is horrible, right? Because this person was injured. And we look at the victim side. And we only cared about the enforcers when they became victims, right? And that's completely backwards from how we should be operating in our society. We should praise the heroism as it's happening. We should be able to identify it. We shouldn't have to wait for tragedy to strike to understand that we've been mistreating these people in terms of their heroic deeds and the value that they serve. And the ancient Greeks certainly understood this, and they understood that the athlete sacrificed, and that's what made them a moral character, and that's what ultimately turned them into heroes. It was the sacrifice. It was clearly the physical sacrifice, also the struggle, right? The hard work and the dedication to train and to become excellent at something. But the ancient Greek athletic world was not a joke either. Death was frequent, injury was often. And so these athletes, when they were able to achieve, were memorialized in ways that no other individuals were ever memorialized in the ancient Greek world. Not the soldiers, not the political leaders, not the dramatists, philosophers did. Somebody like Aristotle actually got a statue at Olympia because he was a historian of the games. So he actually tabulated who won and kept a record. And for that, he got his own statue at Olympia. But it was because he was doing it in service of athletics. And it's this notion of vying for something greater than themselves, right? When athletes strove for perfection, when athletes strove to be the best, the ancient Greeks believed they touched the fingertips of the gods. They transcended the mortal realm. And so if you injured yourself on that path, similar to the hoplite, right, who puts themselves at the point of maximum danger, they deserved praise and they deserved heroization. Sport was really an heroic training ground. And what it tells us is we have to be able to identify the proper type of sacrifice at the right time. And in the ancient Greek world, what the athletes did was they represented unity, peace, and the celebration of excellence, right? Greek hoplites fought against other Greeks. Warfare wasn't this place where the Greeks all came together to celebrate. That was athletics. So when we're talking about heroism, we have to be cognizant, we have to realize, we have to understand that we have to aim ourselves at the proper end and go through it through the proper means. And this is like the tragedy of those enforcers, because they were doing the things that they believed to be right and nobody noticed. Nobody noticed the actual sacrifices, the difficulty that it takes to go out and do those things. And they were, rather than us praising their sacrifice, we actually sacrificed them for ourselves. And that, I think, shows you some of the problems in society when it comes to the hero or the victim. Now, what does that mean? Heroes have to risk in order to obtain the virtues that are associated with them. If you want to live a heroic life, if you want to be a hero to somebody else, you have to struggle, you have to sacrifice. And what the enforcer teaches us is the enforcer and sort of our comfortable lifestyle, we'll say, is that seeking out a little challenge and some physical danger now and then actually can educate us in becoming a hero. Now, don't be stupid, right? Don't go off and do something that's going to put you into the hospital, injure you, right? But one of the things that's really interesting to think about is the line between hero and idiot is really not that thick, right? Usually it's because the idiot triumphed that we then call him a hero, right? You're stupid for doing that. Nobody wants to go through that. Why would you even think about it? Until they see you on the other side. That's when they get it. So why should you embrace, or why should I embrace a dangerous challenge? And danger is relative, right? So you have to think about where you are and what is something that's a little bit uncomfortable for you. Maybe it's not even a physical thing, although I highly suggest a little bit of physical discomfort is an extremely good way to teach yourself how to become heroic. But put yourself in a dangerous challenge. See how your mind and body respond. One of the things that's really neat is, for example, when I'm out trail running and I take a wrong turn, I don't have water, and I realize, oops, like, I have a lot more left to go, and I haven't actually prepared myself to do it. Your body and your mind go into this hyper focus, right? It's like survival mode. And ultimately, that's kind of like a message from your soul and from your spirit, right? That you're engaging in something really important, because if something goes wrong, you understand that the consequences are dire. But that's what makes a hero. A hero willingly puts themselves in a position like that in order to obtain and in order to achieve. And the outcome of that is inspiration for everybody else. So always remember, when we're trying to become heroic, we're doing so for ourselves, but really to inspire and motivate those that are around us, and for us to become better, to live up to our own heroic potential. Okay. Love talking to you guys. I will see you in the next one.